This is it, y'all. It's the year a Giant is finally going to hit 30 home runs in a season for the first time since 2004.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. Been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, hosting this show since prior to the 2019 season, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. And speaking of years, this is the year that a San Francisco Giant is finally going to hit 30 home runs. Why am I thinking about that? Well, because it was a mailbag question. It is Mailbag Monday, and the first question comes from Ryan, who says, do you think this is finally the year the Giants get someone hitting 30 homers, and who do you think are the likely candidates? And then in parentheses, Ryan says, Adames, Chapman, Ramos seem to be the obvious options. I would add in Gerard Encarnacion as like a sneaky possibility if he were to have like the breakout season that they hope he's going to have. Then he would probably be the only other guy. I guess if Mike Yastrzemski just really went off, he possibly has he even hit 20 though. I think he's consistently hit. Yastrzemski has two 20 homer seasons, including 2019 when he hit 21 in just 107 games. So he is a possibility. I suppose Lamont Wade doesn't play enough to be a legit threat. But Heliot Ramos, he said it like he was being interviewed during a recent game that was actually televised. And, you know, he said that it was one of his goals this year was to be the first Giant to hit 30 homers in a season since '04. He is aware of that streak, which, by the way, every other team has had, I forget the number, it's like at least 4 30-homer seasons in that span, something like that, and the Giants have none. And it was Bonds, like the greatest home run hitter of all time. So it's wild, has a lot to do with the ballpark, but it's also just kind of ridiculous, and it's time, and they've got enough guys. Like Heliot Ramos hit 22 last year in 121 games. Certainly possible. You know, there's projections have him hitting, you know, on Fangraphs, a range of 18 to 24 home runs. And so certainly possible he just hits an extra, 6, I guess. And, you know, projections I would take with a grain of salt. It's like you play the game on the field. And if he improves upon his breakout season, then of course he could. And how about this? The Bat X for Matt Chapman actually projects exactly 30 homers. And this other projection system called Oopsie on Fangraphs projects 29 homers. So there's a very real chance. I mean, to have a projection system projecting 30 homers for a Giants player is kind of a big deal. And for Willy Adames, the projections, this Oopsie projection system has him at 28. The Bat has him at 27. Everything has him in the mid-20s. So it's certainly possible that he could get to 30. And I think you're right that the 3 most likely candidates for sure are those 3, Adames, Chapman, and Ramos. I think narrowing it down, Adames and Chapman, because they play like pretty much every day. So if they don't get hurt, which you can never assume, but if they play pretty much every day, they've got a shot. And then Ramos, I mean, he had the goal as well to be the first right-handed hitter to hit an opposite field splash hit. Right-handed hitter to hit a splash hit, and he did it. And so Ramos is a determined guy, and so I wouldn't sleep on him, as you mentioned, Ryan, in your question. So anyway, I'm calling it. I mean, you prompted this, and it's not a crazy. It's just wild that they haven't. Brandon Belt was going to do it, and then he broke his thumb in 2021. He had 29 homers. But anyway, and they led the National League in homers and set a franchise record for homers in the season. So anyway, it's not like they've never hit homers in this stretch, but nobody's hit 30, that's for sure. This will be season number 22 since then, counting 2004. Anyway, so 21 season. This will be season 21. Wow. Okay. Next question comes from M. Triolo, who says, how confident are you in this season now with how well this spring has gone? So it's a good question because they really have been fantastic this spring. And right now I'm looking at the score. They're winning again. It's 3-0 over the White Sox in the third as I record this. Giants are 15-5 this spring. It's just by far the best winning percentage of any team. The Cubs have been good, 11-5, but the Giants have 4 more wins. So, yeah, it's spring training, but what's got me optimistic about it and believing that there's some realistic qualities to it, in particular, is the performance of the pitching staff and especially these young pitchers. Like the next, I don't know if they're next in line in terms of the questions. I believe they are. But there's like 9 questions that are really similar, and it's about how well guys like Hayden, Birdsong, and Landen, Roupp have been throwing the ball. And so when you have potential breakouts with these young pitchers, and you've got some studs in your lineup, like let's tell it like it is, like Matt Chapman, Willy Adames, those are kind of stud players. Like it's kind of a big deal. They signed 2 players to $150+ million contracts in the span of a few months, something they hadn't done in a very long time. And then I look at Patrick Bailey, and Fangraphs just came out with they did the catcher position as the first position in their positional power rankings series that they do every year, and the Giants come in at second in terms of projected production out of the catcher position. Cal Raleigh, he's a really good defensive catcher and he hits. And Patrick Bailey, though, like he hasn't really hit, but still projected to produce over 5 wins above replacement, which is very much all-star caliber. And if he can hit, which we've seen in stretches from him, then he's a superstar because he's just far and away, like right now, the best defensive player in the game. So you've got some studs on the field, and then you've got some, you got Jung-Hoo Lee, although he's headed for a back MRI. Word was that he just slept on it wrong, but, heading for an MRI, which we'll get into more tomorrow, is never what you want to see. And then you've got other young talent like Heliot Ramos and Tyler Fitzgerald, and then you've got Logan Webb, Robbie Ray. I don't want to be too glass half full with this, but what I've seen from the young pitching, I didn't need to see anything from Chapman and Adames, but they've been doing great. And then guys like Gerard Encarnacion he's just continued to hit, as we've highlighted him a few times on this show in recent weeks. He's just done nothing but hit since the beginning of 2024 in the Mexican League, in AAA, in the major leagues. The results weren't there, but the quality of contact was there. They showed a graphic the other day as he was just having another good game in spring where his average exit velocity was 95 miles an hour, and it was up there with the elite players in the game. And so he's also hitting well in spring. He's 27 years old. And so I'm not sitting here saying, okay, yeah, they're going to win 95 games and cruise to the playoffs, but I'm more this spring has made a meaningful impact on my outlook for them. And I would say it mostly has to do with what we've seen from the pitching, just the strike throwing, but also just particularly some of the young arms that looked poised for breakouts. And then the performance has just totally backed that up and then some. So coming up in just a minute, we'll get into the young pitching and what they're going to do, because there's just too many guys right now performing well. and not enough spots. So how do they deal with that? We'll get into it in just a minute, and before we do, today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by Wonderful Pistachios. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether I'm snacking at my desk, hello, here they are on my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost. They're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Today's episode is also brought to you in part by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch Money, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, this is huge. You can just use Monarch Money to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. All right, here we go. We're going to get into the next round of questions. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Every dayers tomorrow, the latest from spring training. We're sitting back on a lot of recent articles, including some updates on the Giants bullpen competition and some of these non-roster guys like Joey Lucchesi. Also, Jung-Hoo Lee headed for a back MRI. Bryce Eldridge has wrist inflammation. So just a lot to catch you up on tomorrow. But let's just continue on with the questions so we don't waste any time. The next one comes, it's actually like I said, there's like 9 questions that are all very similar. We'll just read through some of them. Antonio says, Pete Carroll, Raiders head coach, I didn't even realize he was the Raiders head coach, talks a lot about having the best guys on the field regardless of draft pick or contract size. Is Bob Melvin humble enough to make the same choice? Roupp and Birdsong are outperforming Hicks and Harrison, and that should mean something for opening day. El Hijo de Whopper says, with the way Landen, Roupp, and Hayden, Birdsong are looking, how do you justify Jordan Hicks staying in the rotation instead of going to the bullpen? Curtis says, what are your thoughts on the suggestion made by some fans that Hicks should be dropped from the rotation in order to allow Roupp and Birdsong to both make the rotation? At Giants 49ers 22 says, at what point do the Giants decide to go to a 6-man rotation? And then Golden Pick Pod 49 asks about moving Harrison to the bullpen, and at Timmy TOUC and then some numbers says, who will be the Giants' 5th starter? Roupp has been awesome, as has Birdsong, but Kyle Harrison was a big part of the rotation last year. Anyway, there's those and more. So as you can see, this is what I would be asking for like a mailbag question. This is the biggest question around the Giants right now. Hayden Birdsong's outing was televised yesterday, and he just continued to dominate. He has gone 12 innings. His strikeout rate is 42%. His walk rate is 0%. Ground ball rate 50%. ERA 0.75. Fielding independent pitching 130. Batting average on balls in play 261. And he's been a low batting average on balls in play kind of guy throughout his minor league. Well, at least last year in the minors, it was 269. Last year in the majors, it was 272. So, I mean, and that's just Hayden Birdsong, who we kind of were not even talking about, even though he was dominating as of about a week ago, because we were talking about how good Landen Roupp has been. And so Roupp, we're going to look at the numbers, and it doesn't even tell the full story. Neither does it for Birdsong, because both of these guys have pitched on the backfields, like against, like in minor league camp, and had very, very impressive outings, including Roupp striking out like the first 9 batters he faced the other day. So Roupp in major league camp has a strikeout rate of 30.4%, walk rate of 2.2%. So, yeah, and that's not even to mention Kyle Harrison, who was recently considered like a top 10 or top 20 prospect in baseball and has the most major league experience of any of these guys. And so it's funny because I was independently, I hadn't seen, to speak to, I think it's Curtis's question about the suggestion made by some fans that Hicks should be dropped from the rotation in order to allow Roupp and Birdsong to make it. I hadn't seen that anywhere, but I was thinking it. Like after watching Birdsong yesterday and being like, how do you keep both of these guys? Like, how do you justify one of them not making not just the rotation, but possibly not the major league team? Because they both look like starters, and to put one in the bullpen, and I'm talking about both and not even mentioning Kyle Harrison, even though, you know, some of the numbers don't look so great for Harrison, but there's obviously upside there as well. And so I think Harrison is probably out of the picture for that opening day rotation because there's just simply not the room right now. But yeah, I mean, the first question, that's why I put it first, about Pete Carroll and the best players on the field, regardless of contract or draft pick or whatever, is relevant because I think of Jordan Hicks and I think of the fact that they've kind of promised him, like when they signed him, that they were going to give him the opportunity to pitch out of the rotation. And so you've got Logan Webb, you've got Robbie Ray, Justin Verlander. None of those guys are going to the bullpen to start the season. Jordan Hicks was a reliever his whole career before he signed with the Giants, in very large part because they offered him a shot at pitching out of the rotation. And let's not forget, too, he was excellent to start the season last year, and he's put on a bunch of muscle. But if you look at the spring performance, and this is where it's like, well, how much do you read into the spring performance? It's not nearly as good as what we've seen from Birdsong and Roupp. And so this is why I cannot answer the question as to what are they going to do, but I would guess that they don't just throw Jordan Hicks into the bullpen to start the season. And you may not like that. I may not like that. But when you say, is Bob Melvin humble enough? I don't know if it's about humility. It's about, do the Giants want to aggravate one of their players, one of their veteran players, in favor of a younger player when, like, on opening day, in the first turn through the rotation? Because guys always get hurt, guys underperform. Like if Jordan Hicks goes out there and struggles and somebody gets sent down, which will seem very unfair if it happens, whether it's Birdsong or Roupp, and they're just dominating, then you maybe make a move at that point. But like objectively speaking, I would very much like to see both of those guys in the rotation. But it also matters how much are you reading into spring training results versus, I think these days it's more relevant to look at like the quality of the pitches and also strike throwing. And I don't know, I mean, Hicks's walk rate is 11% this spring versus 0 for Birdsong and 2.2% for Roupp. So there's a possibility. I mean, maybe they do make that move, but under Buster Posey, you know, I think that it kind of doesn't matter who's leading, who's running the ship. I just don't know that you want to kind of tick off one of your veteran players that you signed to this contract like right away to start a season. Like maybe let him fail and then make the move. But what does that mean for Birdsong and Roupp and Harrison? Like, who goes to the minors? Do they all make the team and some of them are in the bullpen? Do they do a 6-man rotation? That was another question. I don't think they do a 6-man rotation, but maybe they do. Maybe that's how they answer this riddle, is Harrison either goes to AAA or is, I would say, the second lefty out of the bullpen, but they seem to like Joey Lucchesi. So maybe Harrison goes to AAA and Lucchesi makes the team and they go to a 6-man rotation to start the year. You know, taking off some of the workload, but it's kind of non-traditional. And with Posey in charge, I don't really see them going with the 6-man rotation. But also, if ever there was a reason this kind of situation with 2 young players just looking very deserving of not just making a team, but being in a major league rotation, this could be the time. And then maybe you drop back down to 5 based on performance. Whoever's not pitching well just kind of gets bumped. You know, if it's a young player to AAA or to the bullpen, or if it's Jordan Hicks, he gets just moved to the bullpen. So, great question. I don't have the answer for you. And we're going to find out with opening day next Thursday. So we're going to find out soon enough. And yeah, so anyway, the next couple of questions are about the bullpen. So they're similar, but a little bit different. This is a YouTube commenter. Thank you to those. I've just started posting the prompt for the mailbag questions on YouTube. Cole Dunstan says, how do you think the bullpen will shake up? We know that Rogers, Doval, Walker, and even Jelly are locks, but who else? And then Cole says, I am really liking Trivino, and Lucchesi has looked good. And then J Dubs says, given how Birdsong and Roupp have been tearing it up, what are the chances we see Kyle Harrison being the likely second lefty in the bullpen? So we'll answer that question. Question about David Villar, Joel Peguero, who the question is he in the bullpen for sure? Oh my gosh, it's very hard to make this opening day roster prediction, but we'll answer the questions coming up in just a minute. And before we do,
the NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
all right, here we go. We are going to get to more questions and answers. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Every dayers tomorrow. There's a lot more to get to. Throughout the week, we've got more mailbag questions, a ton more, and we've also got just a bunch of updates. Giants real estate situation with the development over across the Lefty O'Doul Bridge. I'm blanking on what it's called. Mission Rock. So there's a lot to get to this week. And then opening day is next week. I can't believe it. Very excited. So anyway, without further delay, the next question is I read it already. How do I think the bullpen will shake up? And specifically Trivino and Lucchesi. And then the other question is about Kyle Harrison being the second lefty in the bullpen. So the question, I would say, and by the way, right now the number one player being searched on Fangraphs, Hayden Birdsong. So the baseball world has taken note of how well Hayden Birdsong is performing right now in spring. He's the number one searched player on Fangraphs as of this moment. But Lucchesi and Trivino are interesting players because they're on these non-roster deals. They're veteran players. Lucchesi has not allowed a run in 5 innings this spring. 5 appearances, 5 innings. Strikeout rate just 15.8%. Hasn't walked a hitter. Ground ball rate 60%. I don't know if this ground ball rate stuff is only when they're in parks with StatCast, which is not every park, including the Giants' home park. But anyway, that's what Lucchesi has done. in, again, 5 innings. And Trivino has pitched in 7 1/3 innings and has also not allowed a run. But his strikeout rate, it's 26%, walk rate 15%. So the ground ball rate 56%. I mean, it's. I said this the other day when trying to make an opening day roster prediction that I think we could all submit, like every one of you who listens to the show today could submit a guess just for the pitching staff of who the 13 players will be on that line on opening day, even if we assume nobody gets hurt between now and opening day. And I'm not sure anybody would get it right. That's how uncertain, because it's complicated enough without considering guys like Trivino and Lucchesi, in my opinion. And so I just have no idea, like, to answer your question. I have no idea if Trivino and Lucchesi make the team. It's kind of like, I think part of it is that if a Hayden Birdsong like doesn't make it, or a Landen Roupp, do you want them in the bullpen on the major league team, or do you want them to continue to make starts in AAA, basically? And it could very well be that they want them to continue to make starts, and so they get unfairly sent down, and guys like Trivino make the team over them. And in terms of the lefty, is it Lucchesi, or is it, does Kyle Harrison move to the bullpen, or do they want him to make starts down in the minors? It may come down to that, and I wouldn't be surprised if a player's not going to be in the rotation, like a Kyle Harrison or a Birdsong or a Roupp, that they get sent down as opposed to into the bullpen so that they can continue to get stretched out as starters and not kind of waste away in the pen and then not be able to fill in the event that they're needed in that rotation. So that's definitely a possibility, and that's kind of where I'll leave it because I just don't know. Next question comes from another YouTube commenter, Vic6695, who says, I'm kind of torn on David Villar. His bat is great in the minors, but we've only seen a few flashes in the majors. Do you think there's any way they can keep him? I'd hate to see him traded and then catch fire. All right, so David Villar out of minor league options, something we've discussed a bunch. He's basically trying out for other teams right now in Giants spring training, in my opinion. He's been okay offensively. He's been about league average. And again, I don't know if that's for the Cactus League or just for spring performers in general, but I do look at like what stands out as the Zips projection system has him as about a 2-win player in just 119 games, which, yeah, I mean, that would have some value, except he doesn't appear poised to be in line to make the Giants opening day roster, in which he cannot be optioned. So they would have to trade or DFA him. By the way, the last couple years, he's not actually done that well in the minors. He tore it up in 2022, but he was just 9% above average in 2023 and 2% above average in 2024, and that's in AAA. Remember, it's a lively offensive environment over there, and that's worth considering. And he also, VR, has not played defense particularly well. I guess he actually has. He's graded as I take that back, as an above average defender at third in limited playing time there in the major leagues. His primary position has been third in, I believe, the minors and the majors. Yeah. And, he can also play first, which he's been okay at, and he's played some second. I remember some big blunderous plays at second. It's just kind of looking for a spot for him when he plays second versus it's his natural position. And so is there an off chance he makes the opening day roster just so they don't have to cut him loose? I suppose if like Brett Wisely and Casey Schmidt get injured or something, or you could option both of those players and keep David Villar and try to let him break out or build up some value so that you're not just giving him away for like basically nothing, which is probably essentially what the Giants would get at this point in time. He is 28 years old. He'll be 28 all year. Doesn't turn 29 until January of next year. but I think he's likely to not make the team and end up elsewhere. He could be DFA'd and clear waivers and get outrighted to the minors, but I think somebody would take a chance on him given what you said. I mean, he tore it up in 2022 in the minor leagues, and you look at that ZiPS projection, which is pretty strong. And even Dan Szymborski, who does the ZiPS projection system, commented on how his system really likes David Villar, and he could see him ending up on some team like the Dodgers and having some 2 to 3 WAR seasons or something like that, which would be nightmare fuel if you're a Giants fan. So I agree with you. It would hate to see him. I mean, I would like to. I'm rooting for the guy no matter what. But if it's like on some rival and he breaks out, and it would sting, of course. But rooting for him to continue his playing career and hopefully catch on with a major league team. It's just likely not going to be the Giants. All right, another commenter from YouTube, Clayton. Johansson, says, is Joel Peguero in the bullpen for sure? And will we see, let me see if I can get this name right, Sabian Celbayos in AAA. I want to see him on the Giants very soon. So this guy, Celbayos, I think I'm saying that correctly. Or did I? Yes. Sabine Ceballos. Sabine. He's 22 years old and was acquired from the Braves in the Jorge Soler and Tyler Matzik. Or no, the Giants got Tyler Matzik. They got rid of Luke Jackson and Jorge Soler. Reminds me of the Mark Melancon trade, just saying, where they dumped some bad contracts and ended up with Melancon with Tristan Beck, who's intriguing, and now Ceballos is intriguing as well. I mean, he just, in 2024, in high A with the Giants, it was just 32 games, but he hit .295 with a .364 on base and .549 slugging. So he's only made it as high A. And so I don't think they're going to just push him right to AAA, but could he start the season in AA after what he did in high A? Maybe. Or he goes back to high A, and if he keeps it up, he would go to AA. So he's definitely a guy to watch. He was in the spring breakout, or the whatever they call it, the young players, prospects on the Giants played a game that was televised. I think it was televised. I wasn't able to watch, and this guy had like a 3-run double to tie the game, or a 2-run double to tie the game. And he's just been on a tear this spring, by the way. He's made 13 plate appearances. Walk rate is 31%. Strikeout rate just 15%. And his isolated power is 600. His isolated power is 375. He's hit 500 with a 692 on base and 875 slugging. So definitely a potential breakout candidate and someone to watch. And just keep in mind, someone they got for, in a salary dump for 2 players they didn't want anymore in Jorge Soler and Luke Jackson. And, Jorge Soler, the Braves then dumped on to the Angels. So if he becomes anything, just like Tristan Beck, like it's another like savvy little move that Farhan Zaidi doesn't get enough credit for. Anyway, although he signed Jorge Soler, and he didn't sign Mark Melancon, but he signed Jorge Soler and Luke Jackson, so it's worth pointing that out too. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast with hosts Dominic Martino and Matthew Onay. MLB fantasy draft season is here. Be the most informed fan and set yourself up for a league win. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter or X at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out so much. So thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. Can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening, and thank you to everyone who asked questions. You are now Locked On Giants.